What if the most joyful day for more than 1 billion people across the world actually begins with hunger, patience, and quiet discipline? What if the celebration that fills homes with laughter and sweet food is actually born from 30 days of restraint, prayer, and deep reflection? Every year, as the month of Ramadan slowly reaches its final nights, something powerful begins to build in the hearts of believers. There is a feeling that cannot easily be explained, a mixture of gratitude, relief, hope, and a quiet question that lingers in every sincere heart. Was it accepted? Did Allah accept the fasting, the prayers, the late nights of standing in worship, the moments when the tongue was held back from anger, the times when charity was given quietly, unseen except by the one who sees everything? For an entire month, Muslims reshape their lives around obedience to Allah. Days begin before dawn with the meal of suhoor. Sleep becomes shorter, but the soul becomes stronger. Hunger is no longer just a physical sensation. It becomes a reminder of those who struggle every day. Thirst becomes a teacher of patience. Each sunset becomes a moment of gratitude when the fast is finally broken with the simple sweetness of dates and water. The nights are filled with prayer as mosques overflow with believers reciting the words of the Quran that was revealed as guidance for all of humanity. Slowly, day after day, something begins to change inside the believer. Hearts soften, pride weakens, gratitude grows. Ramadan is not only about staying away from food and drink. It is about training the soul to live in constant awareness of Allah. And then, just as believers begin to feel deeply connected to this sacred rhythm of worship, the final days approach and the question spreads across homes and communities everywhere. When will Eid arrive? But before the story continues, take a moment and share something with us. Thank you for watching Islamic Insight channel. It is always beautiful to see this global family of believers connected through faith and knowledge. From which country are you watching this video today? Write it in the comments so we can see how far the message of Islam travels across the world. And if you love learning about Islam, its history, and its beautiful traditions, subscribe to this channel and join us on this journey of discovery. As Ramadan draws to its close, anticipation begins to fill the air. For many people outside the Muslim world, Eid may appear to be simply a religious holiday marked by food and celebration. But for Muslims, Eid al-Fitr carries a much deeper meaning that is rooted in worship, gratitude, and obedience to Allah. The word Eid itself means something that returns again and again, a recurring joy that comes back year after year. It is a day of celebration, but not the type of celebration that comes from worldly achievements or personal success. It is a celebration that comes from completing an act of worship that Allah commanded. The word Fitr refers to breaking the fast, the moment when the believer finally returns to eating and drinking after an entire month of restraint. When these two words come together, Eid al-Fitr becomes the celebration of breaking the fast, the moment when Muslims around the world rejoice because Allah allowed them to complete the sacred journey of Ramadan. The significance of this moment is deeply connected to the Quran itself. Allah says in Surah Al-Baqarah that the month of Ramadan is the month in which the Quran was revealed as guidance for mankind, and clear proofs of guidance and the criterion between truth and falsehood. This means that Ramadan is not simply a month of personal discipline. It is the month that celebrates the beginning of divine guidance for humanity. When Muslims fast during Ramadan, they are remembering the moment when the words of Allah began to descend upon the heart of Prophet Muhammad. Peace and blessings be upon him. Eid therefore becomes a celebration of guidance itself. It is a day when believers thank Allah not only for food, family, and health, but for something even greater, the gift of Islam. After 30 days of fasting, praying, giving charity, and seeking forgiveness, the believer stands on the edge of Eid with a heart filled with gratitude. The celebration is not loud in its purpose. It is not about excess or arrogance. Instead, it is a humble celebration that acknowledges that every act of worship during Ramadan was only possible because Allah allowed it. That is why sincere believers greet the day of Eid with both joy and humility. They celebrate, but they also continue to pray that their efforts were accepted. And yet the arrival of Eid is not announced with fireworks or public countdowns. It begins with something quiet, something simple, something that has connected Muslim communities for more than 14 centuries. It begins with the sighting of the crescent moon. On the 29th evening of Ramadan, just after the sun disappears below the horizon, millions of Muslims around the world look toward the sky. In deserts, villages, cities, rooftops, and open fields, believers search for a thin curve of light that will determine whether Ramadan has ended. This tradition comes directly from the teachings of the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him. In an authentic hadith recorded in Sahih al-Bukhari and Sahih Muslim, the Prophet instructed the believers with clear and simple guidance. He said to fast when you see the moon and to break the fast when you see it again. This single instruction shaped the rhythm of Islamic life for centuries. Long before modern calendars and technology, the Muslim community followed the natural signs created by Allah in the sky. When the new crescent of Shawwal appears, it signals that Ramadan has come to an end and the day of Eid has arrived. There is something deeply beautiful about this moment. The moon itself is small and delicate, sometimes barely visible against the fading light of the evening sky. Yet that small crescent carries enormous meaning. When it is confirmed, news spreads quickly through communities and families. Messages are shared, calls are made, and joyful announcements fill homes and mosques. Children begin to smile with excitement. Families begin preparing for the morning prayer. Kitchens come alive with the preparation of food that has been absent during the fasting hours of Ramadan. But beneath the excitement, there remains a quiet, spiritual reflection. Ramadan has ended, and believers cannot help but wonder if they will live long enough to witness it again. That thought brings both gratitude and humility. Eid is approaching, but the believer understands that the true celebration is not only the feast or the gathering of families. The true celebration is the hope that Allah accepted the fasting, the prayers, and the sincere efforts made throughout the sacred month. And as the crescent moon hangs gently in the sky, marking the beginning of Shawwal, the Muslim world prepares to welcome one of the most beautiful days in the Islamic calendar, the day known as Eid al-Fitr. As the news of the crescent moon spreads through homes, neighborhoods, and entire cities, the final night of Ramadan begins to unfold with a special atmosphere that believers recognize immediately. It is a night filled with movement and preparation, but also with reflection and quiet gratitude. For an entire month, Muslims have lived with a rhythm that reshaped their days and nights. They woke before dawn while the world was still asleep. They fasted through long hours of hunger and thirst, and they stood in prayer during the peaceful hours of the night, while verses of the Quran echoed through mosques. Now that the sacred month has reached its final moments, hearts feel both joy and a strange kind of sadness. Joy because Eid is approaching, but sadness because Ramadan, the guest that brought so much mercy and spiritual renewal, is preparing to leave. Many believers spend this final evening thinking about the days that passed so quickly. They remember the early mornings of suhoor, the quiet moments of breaking the fast, and the long nights of prayer during which the words of Allah were recited with humility and hope. In these moments, people ask themselves a question that only Allah can truly answer. Were our efforts accepted? Were our sins forgiven? Did the prayers reach the heavens the way we hoped they would? This reflection creates a beautiful balance between celebration and humility. Families begin preparing clothes for the next morning. Homes are cleaned and decorated. Children feel excitement building as they know that a special day is approaching, a day filled with joy and gifts and family gatherings. But even in the middle of these preparations, many believers take time to remember Allah, offering additional prayers, reciting Quran, or simply raising their hands and asking for acceptance. Scholars throughout Islamic history have often reminded the believers that the true concern after completing a good deed should not be pride, but acceptance. A person who fasted sincerely hopes that Allah accepted the fast more than they celebrate completing it. That is why the night before Eid carries a special spiritual tone. It is not simply the night before a celebration, it is the closing chapter of a sacred journey that transformed hearts. Yet before the joy of Eid can fully begin, Islam introduces a beautiful act of generosity that ensures the celebration belongs to the entire community, not only to those who have wealth or comfort. This act is known as Zakat al-Fitr. The Messenger of Allah, peace and blessings be upon him, made this charity obligatory upon the Muslims before the Eid prayer, so that every member of society would have the ability to celebrate the day with dignity. The wisdom behind this command is both practical and deeply compassionate. During Ramadan, Muslims discipline their bodies and purify their hearts through fasting, but human beings are imperfect. Throughout the month, a person may speak carelessly, lose patience, or fall into small mistakes that reduce the spiritual perfection of the fast. Zakat al-Fitr serves as a purification for those shortcomings. It is a charity that cleanses the fast from any flaws, while also helping those who are struggling financially. Authentic narrations recorded in Sahih collections explain that the Prophet instructed the Muslims to give this charity before the Eid prayer, so that the poor would not be forced to ask for help on the day of celebration. Instead, they would be able to prepare food, gather with their families, and experience the same joy as everyone else. In the earliest Muslim communities, this charity was often given in the form of staple foods such as dates, barley, or grain, because these were the essential provisions that sustained households. The amount was intentionally simple and manageable, so that nearly every Muslim could participate. This act reveals something profound about the Islamic understanding of celebration. Eid is not meant to be a moment where some people enjoy abundance while others remain forgotten. It is meant to be a day when the entire community feels connected through compassion and generosity. When believers give Zakat al-Fitr, they are reminded that their worship is not only about their personal relationship with Allah, but also about their responsibility toward others. The poor are not outsiders to the celebration. They are an essential part of it. Through this simple yet powerful act, the joy of Eid spreads beyond individual homes and reaches every corner of the community. As the night slowly fades and the sky begins to lighten, the morning of Eid arrives with a feeling that is difficult to describe. It feels different from any other morning of the year. After 30 days of fasting from sunrise until sunset, the believer wakes up on Eid morning knowing that today the fast is no longer required. The day begins with simple traditions taught by the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, traditions that carry both symbolism and beauty. One of these traditions is to eat before leaving for the Eid prayer. Authentic narrations mention that the Prophet would eat dates before going out, reminding the believers that the period of fasting has now come to an end. This small act carries deep meaning. It marks the transition from restraint back to normal life, but in a way that still reflects gratitude to Allah. Families begin to wake each other gently. Children put on their best clothes. New garments are often worn if possible, but even when new clothes are not available, people make sure their appearance is clean and dignified. Fragrance is applied, homes fill with cheerful greetings, and the words Eid Mubarak begin to spread between family members and neighbors. What makes the morning of Eid so powerful is the sense of unity that begins to appear in every street and neighborhood. People step outside their homes and begin walking toward the same destination. Mosques and open prayer grounds become gathering points where entire communities assemble together. The journey itself becomes part of the experience as groups of families walk side by side, greeting one another warmly. In many traditions, Muslims recite the takbir during this time, repeating the words, "Allah is the greatest, Allah is the greatest. There is no deity worthy of worship except Allah, and Allah is the greatest, and all praise belongs to Allah." These words echo across neighborhoods and cities, reminding everyone that the joy of Eid is ultimately a celebration of faith and gratitude to the Creator. As people arrive at the place of prayer, the sight becomes extraordinary. Rows begin to form across wide open spaces or large mosques, stretching further and further as more believers arrive. Elders stand beside young children. Neighbors stand beside people they may not know personally, but recognize as brothers and sisters in faith. Differences of wealth, background, and social status disappear as everyone stands shoulder to shoulder preparing for the same prayer. In that moment, the true beauty of Eid becomes visible. It is not only a celebration of completing the fast, it is a powerful reminder that Islam unites hearts across families, communities, and nations. The long month of Ramadan may have tested patience and discipline, but this morning reveals its reward. A community gathered together in gratitude, humility, and joy, ready to thank Allah for allowing them to reach this blessed day. As the gathering settles and the rows of worshippers stretch across the prayer ground, a powerful sense of unity fills the air. Thousands of people stand side by side, forming lines that move in perfect harmony. Some arrived early, quietly reciting remembrance of Allah while waiting for the prayer to begin. Others joined moments later, greeting friends and neighbors with warm smiles. But once the prayer begins, a deep calm spreads through the entire gathering. Every believer faces the same direction, toward the sacred house in Mecca, the same direction that has united Muslims in prayer for more than 14 centuries. There are no barriers between the people standing in these rows. Wealth does not matter here. Status does not matter. Titles and positions carry no weight in this moment. A farmer may stand beside a scholar. A laborer may stand beside a wealthy merchant. A child stands beside an elder whose life has witnessed decades of faith and worship. In this gathering, every individual stands equal before Allah, the one who sees the sincerity in every heart. The prayer begins with the declaration that has echoed through Islamic history since the earliest days of the Muslim community. Allahu Akbar. Allah is the greatest. These words are repeated again and again, filling the space with a rhythm that reminds every believer of the true purpose behind this gathering. The day of Eid is joyful, but its foundation is worship. The prayer itself is different from the daily prayers that Muslims perform throughout the year. It carries additional declarations of Allah's greatness, reminding the community that this celebration is not about worldly achievements, but about gratitude to the Creator. For 30 days, believers controlled their desires, restrained their tongues, guarded their actions, and sought forgiveness from Allah. Now they stand together on this morning to thank Him for allowing them to complete that journey. Authentic narrations describe how the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, would gather the Muslim community for this prayer, encouraging even women and children to attend so that the entire community could share in the blessings of the day. The gathering was never meant to be limited to a small group of worshippers. Eid was designed to bring the whole community together in one place, united by faith and gratitude. When the prayer concludes, the Imam addresses the people with words that remind them of what Ramadan has taught them. The sermon often focuses on gratitude, patience, generosity, and the responsibility to carry the lessons of Ramadan into the rest of the year. Ramadan may have ended, but the discipline it taught should remain alive in the believer's life. The Quran that was recited so often during the nights of Ramadan should not be forgotten once the month has passed. The kindness shown to others should not fade once the fasting is over. Eid, therefore, becomes both a celebration and a reminder. It celebrates what has been accomplished, but it also reminds believers that faith is not limited to a single month. Once the prayer and sermon are completed, the atmosphere begins to shift from solemn reflection to joyful connection. The lines of worshippers slowly dissolve into groups of friends and families greeting one another with warmth and affection. Smiles spread quickly through the crowd as people exchange heartfelt greetings and prayers for acceptance. One of the most common greetings shared on this day carries a beautiful meaning that reflects the humility of sincere believers. People say, "May Allah accept from us and from you." These words capture the true spirit of Eid. Even in celebration, the believer does not assume that their worship has been accepted. Instead, they hope and pray that Allah, in His mercy, accepted their fasting, their prayers, and their charity. Embraces are exchanged between friends who may not have seen each other for months. Children run between adults, excited by the joyful energy surrounding them. Elders are greeted with respect and warmth as younger members of the community ask for their prayers and blessings. It is a moment where barriers seem to dissolve and hearts become open again. Sometimes, old disagreements are quietly forgotten on this day. People who may have been distant from one another during the year find the courage to greet each other again with sincerity. Eid becomes a bridge that reconnects relationships and strengthens the bonds of brotherhood and sisterhood within the Muslim community. The beauty of this moment lies in its simplicity. There are no grand ceremonies or complicated rituals required to experience the joy of Eid. It is found in the handshake between neighbors, the embrace between friends, the laughter of children receiving small gifts, and the quiet gratitude of believers who know they have just completed one of the most sacred acts of worship in Islam. Families begin making their way home after the prayer, often taking different routes than the ones they used earlier in the morning, following a tradition reported from the Prophet Muhammad. Peace and blessings be upon him. Along the way, they continue greeting others, spreading smiles and good wishes throughout the streets and neighborhoods. As the morning continues, homes slowly come alive with celebration. The kitchens that remained quiet during the fasting hours of Ramadan now fill with the aroma of food prepared for family and guests. Tables are set with dishes that may have been carefully planned for days. In many cultures, sweet foods hold a special place on this day, symbolizing the sweetness of celebration after a month of discipline. Children gather eagerly around elders who present them with gifts or small amounts of money, a tradition that brings joy to young hearts and creates memories that will stay with them for years. Yet beneath the laughter and celebration, there remains a powerful sense of gratitude that shapes the entire day. Believers understand that the joy of Eid is not simply about the food or the gatherings. It is about something much deeper. It is about thanking Allah for guiding them through the sacred month of Ramadan. It is about recognizing that the strength to fast, to pray, and to give charity came only from Him. The greetings exchanged between people carry sincere prayers for acceptance because everyone understands that the true reward of Ramadan is not the celebration itself, but the hope that Allah accepted the worship performed during the month. Throughout the day, families visit relatives, neighbors visit one another, and communities share meals together. Doors remain open longer than usual, welcoming guests with warmth and generosity. Those who may have felt lonely or isolated during the year are often invited to join the celebration, reflecting the Islamic teaching that joy should be shared with others rather than kept within a single household. The spirit of brotherhood becomes visible everywhere. In many communities, it is common to see people delivering food to neighbors or checking on those who may not have family nearby. Eid becomes an opportunity to strengthen the bonds that hold the community together. What makes these moments so meaningful is that they grow from the spiritual transformation that Ramadan created. For 30 days, believers train themselves to become more patient, more generous, and more mindful of Allah. Eid allows that transformation to express itself in the form of kindness, hospitality, and connection. When people gather around tables, share meals, and exchange stories from the month that just ended, they are not simply celebrating a holiday. They are celebrating a journey of faith that changed their hearts. The laughter of children, the smiles between friends, and the prayers whispered quietly by elders all carry the same message. Ramadan may have ended, but the light it brought into the hearts of believers continues to shine through the joy and unity of Eid. As the day of Eid unfolds, the atmosphere of celebration continues to grow in a way that feels both joyful and deeply meaningful. Homes that were quiet during the long fasting hours of Ramadan now fill with laughter, conversation, and the welcoming sounds of family gatherings. Tables are prepared with care, carrying dishes that often reflect generations of tradition. In many cultures, sweet foods take a central place during this celebration, reminding everyone that after a month of discipline and restraint, Allah has allowed His servants to enjoy the blessings of food and companionship again. Children move excitedly through homes and courtyards, dressed in their best clothes, their faces glowing with anticipation and happiness. For them, Eid becomes one of the most memorable days of the entire year, a day when families come together, when gifts are shared, and when joy fills every corner of the home. But even within this cheerful atmosphere, there remains a deeper understanding that the celebration itself is an act of gratitude. The Messenger of Allah, peace and blessings be upon him, made it clear that Muslims were given 2 special days of celebration that replaced the festivals people used to observe before Islam. In an authentic narration recorded in the collections of Sunan Abu Dawud, the Prophet explained that Allah replaced those earlier days with 2 better days, Eid al-Fitr and Eid al-Adha. This teaching reveals something important about the nature of Eid. It is not simply a cultural tradition that developed over time. It is a celebration that was established within the framework of Islamic faith itself. The day exists because Allah allowed it, and the Prophet encouraged the believers to express joy on this occasion. Islam is often described as a religion of balance, a path that encourages discipline and worship while also recognizing the human need for happiness and celebration. After an entire month of fasting, prayer, charity, and reflection, the believer is given a day when joy is not only permitted but encouraged. Families begin visiting one another throughout the day, traveling across neighborhoods and cities to reconnect with relatives they may not have seen in months. Doors remain open for the guests, and hospitality becomes one of the defining features of the celebration. When visitors arrive, they are welcomed with warmth, smiles, and generous portions of food. Conversations flow easily as people share stories from Ramadan, remembering moments that touched their hearts during the sacred month. Some speak about the powerful nights of prayer they experienced. Others remember the quiet moments of breaking the fast with family members. These shared memories strengthen the bonds that connect the community, reminding everyone that Ramadan was not only an individual experience, but a collective journey. Children often become the center of attention during these gatherings. Elders present them with small gifts or money, a gesture that brings excitement and delight to young hearts. The laughter of children echoes through homes, and their joy becomes a reminder that the celebration of Eid should carry warmth and generosity for every generation. Parents watch their children enjoy the day and remember their own childhood memories of Eid, creating a beautiful chain of experiences that connects one generation to the next. The simple act of giving a child a gift becomes more than a small tradition. It becomes part of the cultural memory of the Muslim community, shaping how each generation learns to associate faith with happiness and belonging. Throughout the day, Muslims are encouraged to maintain the spirit of gratitude that Ramadan cultivated in their hearts. Even while enjoying the blessings of food, family, and rest, believers remember that the true purpose of Eid is to thank Allah, Every smile shared with a neighbor, every plate of food offered to a guest, every warm greeting exchanged between friends becomes an expression of that gratitude. The day is filled with joyful moments, but those moments remain connected to faith. The believer understands that this celebration is not separate from worship. Instead, it is an extension of it, a continuation of the gratitude that began during Ramadan. Yet within the joy of Eid, there is also a quiet message that experienced believers understand deeply. Ramadan may have ended, but the purpose of Ramadan has not ended. The sacred month was never meant to be a temporary transformation that disappears as soon as the fasting stops. Instead, it was designed to train the soul, to strengthen the connection between the believer and Allah, and to build habits that can last throughout the entire year. The discipline learned during Ramadan teaches a powerful lesson. If a person was able to control their desires, guard their speech, and dedicate themselves to worship for 30 days, then it proves that such devotion is possible beyond the boundaries of a single month. Eid, therefore, becomes a moment of reflection as much as it is a moment of celebration. As believers sit with family members or walk through their neighborhoods greeting friends, many quietly ask themselves what will remain from Ramadan in their daily lives. Will the Quran continue to be recited regularly, or will it slowly return to the shelf until the next Ramadan arrives? Will the patience that was practiced during fasting remain part of everyday behavior, or will old habits return? Will the generosity shown through charity continue throughout the year, or will it fade once the month of Ramadan has passed? These questions are not meant to reduce the joy of Eid. Instead, they deepen its meaning. The day of Eid celebrates the completion of Ramadan, but it also marks the beginning of a new chapter in the believer's journey. The habits built during the sacred month can now shape the months that follow. The connection with Allah that was strengthened during the nights of prayer can continue through daily remembrance and sincere supplication. Ramadan may have ended, but the door to worship never closes. In fact, the scholars of Islam have often explained that one of the signs that a good deed has been accepted is that it leads to more good deeds afterward. When a person completes Ramadan and then continues to pray with sincerity, continues to give charity, and continues to remember Allah throughout the year, it becomes a hopeful sign that the worship of Ramadan was accepted. The believer therefore carries the lessons of Ramadan forward like a treasure that must be protected and nurtured. As the hours of Eid pass and the day slowly moves toward evening, the laughter of children, the warmth of family gatherings, and the greetings exchanged between neighbors leave a lasting impression on the heart. The day feels full, not only with celebration, but with meaning. The believer senses that something special has been completed, a sacred journey that required patience, discipline, and faith. Yet there is also a gentle reminder hidden within the beauty of this day. Life continues, time moves forward, and the opportunity to grow closer to Allah remains open. Eid becomes a moment where gratitude and responsibility meet. It celebrates the mercy of Allah, who allowed His servants to complete the fast of Ramadan, but it also invites believers to carry that mercy into the days that follow. The sweetness of the celebration reminds the heart that faith is not meant to feel heavy or distant. It is meant to bring peace, purpose, and joy into the life of the believer. And so the story of Eid continues beyond the celebration itself. It lives on in the quiet determination of believers who leave the day of Eid with renewed faith, hopeful hearts, and a sincere intention to live the rest of the year with the same devotion that filled the sacred days of Ramadan. As the day of Eid continues across the world, something extraordinary becomes visible when one pauses to reflect on it. The celebration that began in a small community in Medina more than 14 centuries ago now echoes across continents, cultures, and languages. From the deserts of Arabia to the crowded cities of Southeast Asia, from villages in Africa to communities scattered across Europe, the Americas and beyond, millions upon millions of Muslims wake up on the same morning with the same sense of gratitude in their hearts. They stand for the same prayer. They repeat the same declarations of Allah's greatness. They greet one another with the same sincere words, asking Allah to accept their worship. It is a powerful reminder that Islam was never meant to be limited to one tribe, one language, or one region. From the very beginning, the message of the Quran was meant for humanity, and the celebration of Eid reflects that universal message in a way that few events in the world can truly match. Across different parts of the world, the outward traditions of Eid may vary slightly, shaped by local cultures and customs that developed over generations. In some regions, families prepare special desserts that appear only during this celebration. In others, entire neighborhoods gather for communal meals that stretch long into the afternoon. Some communities fill their streets with colorful clothing and joyful greetings that echo through crowded markets and narrow alleyways. In rural areas, the celebration may take place under open skies, where families travel long distances just to spend a few hours together. Yet beneath these cultural differences, there remains a shared foundation that connects every Muslim heart. The prayer remains the same. The message of gratitude remains the same. The purpose of the day remains the same. Wherever Muslims live, Eid becomes a visible sign of unity. This unity becomes even more remarkable when one considers the diversity of the global Muslim community. Muslims speak hundreds of different languages and live within societies that are shaped by countless traditions and histories. Yet when Eid arrives, these differences seem to fade into the background. A believer in Indonesia greets Eid with the same words of praise to Allah that are spoken in Morocco. A family in Turkey prepares for the Eid prayer with the same intention that fills the hearts of families in Nigeria or Pakistan. The Quran that was recited during Ramadan is the same Quran for every believer, and the teachings of the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, guide the celebration in every corner of the world. This shared foundation creates a bond that stretches far beyond geography or nationality. It reminds Muslims that they belong to a global community connected through faith, a community that stands together in worship and gratitude regardless of distance. For many believers, this realization becomes one of the most powerful emotional moments of Eid. When they stand in prayer during the morning gathering, they know that countless other believers are performing the same prayer at that very moment, somewhere else on earth. While one community finishes its prayer and begins celebrating, another community on the other side of the world is just beginning its mourning. The sun moves across the planet, and with it, the celebration of Eid travels from one land to another like a wave of gratitude that circles the earth. This thought reminds believers that they are part of something much larger than their own individual lives. Their worship during Ramadan was not an isolated act. It was part of a global movement of devotion where millions of people fasted, prayed, and sought forgiveness at the same time. But even as this global celebration unfolds with warmth and joy, the deeper story of Eid remains rooted in something far more personal and spiritual. At its heart, the day is not simply about gatherings or traditions. It is about transformation. Ramadan arrives each year as a teacher that gently reshapes the believer's soul. During those 30 days, people confront their habits, their weaknesses, and their desires. They learn patience when hunger tests them during the long hours of the day. They learn humility when they stand in prayer during quiet nights, asking Allah for forgiveness. They learn generosity when they give charity and remember those who struggle daily with poverty and hardship. By the time Ramadan reaches its final days, many believers feel that something inside them has changed. The heart becomes softer, gratitude becomes stronger, the awareness of Allah becomes clearer. Eid arrives at the end of this journey like a moment of sunlight after a long climb. It is a celebration, but it is also a quiet reflection on everything that Ramadan brought into the believer's life. The day reminds people that faith is not meant to feel heavy or distant. Islam teaches discipline, but it also teaches balance and mercy. After a month of restraint, the believer is allowed to celebrate. After nights of long prayer, the believer is allowed to gather with family and enjoy the blessings that Allah has provided. This balance between devotion and joy is one of the most beautiful characteristics of the Islamic way of life. Yet beneath the smiles and the shared meals, there remains one thought that stays in the heart of every sincere believer: the question of acceptance. Ramadan may have ended, but the believer continues to wonder whether the fasts were accepted, whether the prayers were recorded with mercy, and whether the sins of the past were truly forgiven. This question is not a sign of doubt in Allah's mercy. It is a sign of humility. The believer hopes deeply that Allah accepted every effort made during the sacred month. That hope becomes one of the most powerful emotions carried through the day of Eid. And perhaps that is the true story of Eid. It is not simply a celebration that appears on the calendar once a year. It is the closing chapter of a sacred journey and the beginning of another. Ramadan teaches the believer how to live with patience, discipline, and constant remembrance of Allah. Eid celebrates that effort, but it also gently reminds the believer to continue walking the path that Ramadan revealed. The prayers should not stop once the fasting ends. The generosity shown during the month should not fade when the celebration is over. The connection with the Quran should not disappear once daily life becomes busy again. When the evening of Eid begins to approach and families slowly settle after a day filled with celebration, many believers feel a quiet sense of peace. The long month of fasting has been completed. The community gathered together in prayer. Families shared meals and laughter. Children experienced the joy of a tradition that will remain in their memories for years. But beyond all of these moments, there is a deeper gratitude that fills the heart. Allah allowed them to witness another Ramadan. Allah allowed them to complete the fast. Allah allowed them to celebrate Eid with the people they love. And so the story of Eid does not truly end when the day finishes. It continues in the lives of believers who carry the lessons of Ramadan into the months that follow. It continues in the prayers whispered quietly after the celebration is over. It continues in the hope that Allah, in His endless mercy, accepted every sincere act of worship performed during the sacred month. Eid becomes a reminder that faith is a journey that returns again and again, just like the celebration itself. Every year, Ramadan will arrive once more, bringing with it another opportunity for forgiveness, renewal, and spiritual growth. And every year, Eid will return as a joyful reminder that the mercy of Allah is always near for those who seek it with sincere hearts.